So, good morning and welcome to our third installment of Sifting Through the Rubble. I'm going to mute everybody, and then you can ask me questions at the end. And we'll probably have some time to discuss. We've been going through the pedagogical principles that we stand for here at Memorial Lutheran School that our faculty adopted officially last year and that we work to implement throughout the grades and throughout our coursework and how philosophically how we think about education here. So we are going to review and then go to this week's principle. We started with Festina Lente, make haste slowly, with the emphasis on one, the image of the dolphin and the anchor from the Emperor Vespasian and later from the Renaissance printer Aldus Manutius, that we are to go forward, certainly, but to do so carefully, not to rush. You can use the carpenter's dictum, measure twice, cut once, right? Slow and steady wins the race. There are lots of ways in which humanity has viewed this as virtuous, as important for living, but certainly for education. As we make haste slowly, we make sure that we are mastering the material. The last time we met, we reviewed multum non multa, much, not many. So as we take pains to be careful in our pace and how we go about learning and growing, we do so with a careful attention to what we study and how many things. Pliny the Younger said or wrote in a letter, they say one should indeed read much, but not many things. Another way of saying that, of course, is quality and not quantity, paying attention to what we study and how we study it with Festina Lente and Multum non multa. Today, we are going to look at Docendo Discimus. By teaching, we learn. And a quote from Seneca, from ancient Rome, men learn while they teach. Now, this may be self-evident to you, it may not be. I know from my own experience, one of the classes that I have taught without fail, from the beginning of serving as a pastor and headmaster all the way to now, is Latin. And Latin is one of the courses that you will not find on any of my transcripts or my report cards, because I never took Latin, not officially through a school. However, I have learned Latin because I have taught it. I did take it unofficially in the basement of Mount Hope Lutheran Church and School in the library on Vicarage. But predominantly, besides some self-teaching, I have learned Latin to the level that I've learned it, really by teaching it to others. And many of you probably have experiences where you have learned by teaching. There's some interesting statistics that go along with memory and the way in which we teach and learn. When it comes to say, a lecture, statistics show that about 5% of the things that are said in lecture we will recall just from the fact that we had the lecture. If we read, 10% of what we read, we're going to remember without other ways of enhancing the memory. If it's an audio-visual, right, if we're watching something and listening at the same time, then the percentage increases to about 20. If it's a demonstration where more of the senses are employed, then the percentage goes up to 30. When there's group discussion and people are engaged in the learning, then the percent of what one remembers goes up to 50. When you practice what you have learned via any of those media, then the percentage is shown to go up to 75%. But 90% of the time when one teaches, what you learn and what you teach that person, 90% of that will be retained. Because when you teach, you learn. Or to use the saying the most clearly, by teaching, we learn. Docendo Discimus. You see in this Latin two words here, right? Docendo and discimus. Docendo is a participle, an ing word for us in English, that comes from doceo docere, which means to teach. Our word doctor comes from this word, doceo docere. Doctors, etymologically speaking, are actually teachers. At least that's what they should be doing. But that's the root, doceo. And then disco, not the dance style and music of the 70s, but disco in Latin is to learn. And we get the word in English from disco, disciple. It comes from the Latin word for student, which is discipuli, discipulus in the singular. So by teaching, we learn, and the statistics show that our memory is enhanced by our teaching of the thing. So as we are learning and as we are teaching, it is the memory that benefits from such activity. Now, how does one do this and still sort of maintain what we hold here, and that is that the teacher is really the main conduit of the learning. The teacher is the master who knows the material, knows the pedagogy, knows the theology, and the teacher is the one who's handing over the great treasury of goods to our students. On the one hand, from the teacher's perspective, the teacher becomes more learned by their daily task of teaching. This is important from the teacher and certainly from the parent perspective, because when you are teaching, when you are instructing, you are not just going through motions, but you're actually learning the things that you are teaching. You are remembering them, you are repeating them, you have to be able to explain them in such a way that the person you are teaching understands them, which means you need to know them, and you end up learning them by doing the instructing. So this is good for the teacher. But then we equip our students to be little teachers. When students serve as mentors, when we pair up stronger students with weaker students, or younger students with older students, which due to COVID, we're doing a little less right now, but certainly it's been our practice to have some of that here at Memorial, and we intend to do more. By having students engaged in such a task, they learn the material that they're involved with better because they are teaching others how to do whatever the task may be. It could be that we pair strong readers with weak readers. I know this is true in Mrs. Bohat's kindergarten class. We used to, and at some point in the future may still, pair older students with younger students for chapel, right? By teaching younger children how to behave in chapel, how to sing, how to stand, how to fold their hands for prayer. We are also not only instructing, but learning the proper way for decorum, for behavior in the sanctuary. There are other examples that one can lean towards, and not as many, again, because our classes are so divided this year in terms of trying to maintain some separation. There are plenty of ways in which students can be encouraged to be involved in a teaching way so that their learning can be, on the one hand, more meaningful, but on the other hand, more firmly cemented in the memory. So you can have peers teaching peers, which certainly happens in class, say in 4th grade or in 5th grade. not necessarily group work, but sort of instruction work, where again, either stronger and students who need to grow, or maybe equal students. You can also, as students get older, involve them in discussion. Again, it's important that a discussion like a Socratic discussion be led the right way. There are what they call Socratic seminars or Socratic circles, but those things tend not to be actually Socratic. They're more just group discussions. A real Socratic discussion is one that is fueled by a teacher who's asking needling questions, like the Socratic dialogues of Plato, where Socrates continues to work through what a person means by asking them questions. This can be a very good way of teaching, especially older students, and allowing older students to be learning while they're going through that process. Our ninth graders this year are just about done with a book by Peter Kreeft, Roman Catholic philosopher and author. The Best Things in Life, I think, is the name of the one they just read, which is a book of Socratic dialogues, Socrates and two characters debating on all sorts of different issues. But that way of teaching, teaching through a pointed discussion, one of question after question, is an excellent way of learning. And through dialogue, one remembers what the person said before, how you responded after, and again, it further inculcates memory. Certainly, recitation from younger students or older students to other students is a way of teaching and learning. You're teaching others how you recite, not only the material that you recite. When we have our fifth graders every year, or whatever group of students we can coerce to perform the Johnny Appleseed play, this is another way that they are both teaching and learning. So when they perform that play for the rest of the student body, for the preschoolers and 2-year-olds and pre-K students, they are actually learning by their teaching of drama, of speaking out loud, of skills that we would assign to the liberal art of rhetoric. So there are all kinds of different ways that one can teach and thereby learn. Modeling for one another, whether this be a model of reciting, whether it be a model of, oh, I see over there that the paragraph you're writing is hitting all of the points we're working on today with regards to our fable. Can you read that for us? By enabling our students to have little moments where they are teaching other students, the way in which they learn becomes first, again, a more meaningful way of learning. But secondly, it becomes a better remembered way of learning. Next week, we'll go to Repetitio Mater Memoriae. Repetition is the mother of memory. And so we'll continue our discussion on why the memory is so important with regards to learning and education, and how we could take advantage of the memory, since especially as we speak about our youngest students, studies have shown, and I forget what the study was some years ago now, that the memory of a student, of a child, peaks at 4 and then begins to go down. And how one uses the memory determines the rate of decline. And there are so many good ways to engage the memory when we're learning, when we're living, and so many things the memory is good for, that it is important that we train it. So we train it by teaching others, we train it by learning, and in both of these, we train it by using it, because that memory is such a great treasure trove of knowledge, of experience, of ways of handling the world and other people around us. It's an excellent thing for us to cultivate in our students, and certainly in ourselves. All right. So that's a little bit about Docendo Discimus. By teaching, we learn. Are there any questions or thoughts or sort of diving boards that this brings us to with regards to how we teach or why we teach in general or here at Memorial? I'll certainly take questions. You can either chat them to me or you can do the hand raised thing in Zoom. And Charlie, you got a question?
Yeah, just if you may have sent this out, but maybe just email me this nice list, this pedagogical principles list.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, that's it.
Great. Yeah,
I got to agree with you. This business about learning. Whenever I have to teach a class, back in the old days, I'd give organic chemistry to folks, and sometimes I didn't understand it all. But when I got through trying to teach it to the students, now I understood.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It worked.
One of my favorite examples of this, again, besides Latin for me, is my experience with math. Yeah. I couldn't stand math as a student, and actually, to dovetail, the class I was in on 9/11 was math. But I couldn't. I just didn't like it at all, and I'm convinced that how the teacher treats the subject is very important for the student. And I had to teach math a few years in Roswell, and by teaching math, I not only came to understand it better, but I came to actually enjoy it. And to enjoy math as a subject and to know it better. I mean, the year that I taught 6th grade math, my multiplying and dividing fraction skills were probably the best they've ever been. And it was by needing to have that material at the front of my mind and being able to explain it in such a way that other students could do it and embody it. And also, when you teach people, you do want them to enjoy. Luther said about teachers that one of the most important things is that they actually be excited about what they're teaching. Because when you are excited about what you are teaching, you inculcate wonder in the people that you are teaching, even if it's as mundane as 6th grade math, or some people may view organic chemistry as mundane. I think it's kind of interesting, but when you approach it in a way that is interesting, either because you really like it, or you just know that if you approach it that way, people will appreciate it better and remember it better, it does awaken an excitement in the student.
Right.
Book recommendations on memory. The one that still stands out in my head that I have read bits and pieces of is Francis Yates' The Art of Memory, which is a really interesting study. And I'll probably mention it again next week when we do Repetitio Mater Memoriae. In the notes that I have here, there's a book called The Forgetting Curve, but I haven't read this. So I hesitate to recommend it, but it probably is good. It's called The Forgetting Curve by a guy named Thalheimer. I'll post it as a chat. The Forgetting Curve by Thalheimer. And I haven't read this one. I'll have to add it to my list. Art of Memory by Francis Yates is very interesting. It talks about the different ways in which people have engaged memory, especially in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and goes through the concept of the memory palace. I mentioned this, I think, last week in Coffee with the Headmaster. Ways of setting aside information inside your head. But the Forgetting Curve, in the notes I've got from Dr. Christopher Perrin, it gets mentioned a lot in terms of the way in which we forget things and why it's so important to work on remembering, different methods of retrieving data, different methods of reviewing information that we've learned. I think to tie Docendo Discimus back into Festina Lente, and this matter of memory back into Festina Lente, there's how many people who are here, and you don't even have to answer this legitimately, but you could like reviewing, right? Or if you've taught a course, you enjoy the review day. I think a lot of people are very forward driven when it comes to teaching, and would prefer to go to the next part or the thing they're most excited about, and don't really appreciate the value of reviewing, of going over material for the purpose of retaining it, and being able to then use that material in the future. So reviewing, and certainly you can use in the classroom, and I intend to continue to encourage our teachers to think of different ways to use this Docendo Discimus. By teaching, we learn. You can have students be involved in review from a teaching perspective, which will help them keep the material better in their heads, regardless of what it is. It could be simple facts, like math facts or phonograms. You could even, this is just to the top of my head, when like say kindergarten is going over phonogram review, you could have a well-behaved student come up and lead the phonogram review. These are different ways, and if you've got multiple children at home, this could be another thing you could do around homework time, to where if one of your children is struggling with learning a certain thing or remembering a certain thing, you can use different methods of, say, tutoring or teaching to help a student who's having a time of learning something to inculcate that information better. So Docendo Discimus is one of our principles that we embody here and are working to embody here at Memorial, and one that is certainly tried and true in life, as Charlie brought up, right? When you have to teach something, you really do learn it better. And to a certain extent, it's also a great thing to teach children that teaching is important. I think the teaching has been professionalized in such a way that many of us don't think of ourselves as teachers if we're not paid to do it, or if we haven't gone to school or been certified to do it. We think, oh, that's not for me. And depending on your temperament and your patience, it may not be. But there are lots of things that you do that teach at home, in the workplace, and help you learn things better. Yes, Tanya.
Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling in from my doctor's office, so this is some serious commitment here to make this meeting. I hope I get extra points.
Good for you.
The internet is a little choppy here, but I was just going to share that since my children have been coming to Memorial Lutheran, my son has been really enjoying the hymns and the music, which is funny because we listen to a lot of contemporary worship in my home, but it seems that Dean connects more with the songs that y'all sing in chapel. Neat. So he has been coming home and he's actually been teaching my parents, me, all these fabulous hymns and songs that we haven't really been exposed to be honest, before, because like I said, we usually listen to more contemporary worship. And so that's been really awesome, to watch him kind of teach us a little bit about what he's learning. And then yesterday, my daughter called me to share some experiment they did. I don't know, it had to do with a candle and oxygen, and I don't really even know, so she's going to show us tonight what she learned with this oxygen, the candle thing, which is probably going to be something I'll learn. So I just wanted to say, to fit it into the perspective of this topic, that I'm really just continue to be so thankful for this school. And I see the passion that my children are having about learning, and they're teaching us some things. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. That's great.
Tanya, actually, I took pictures of that, the science project that your daughter was talking about. And I also took a little video too. So I'm going to put it on media so you can see it too. But it was really great.
That's an excellent testimony.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Anything else for the good of the group this morning as we wrap up our discussion of Docendo Discimus?
Pastor Paul, thank you for this presentation and for making it available, the recording. And this isn't really as much of a question, but at least a comment. I've seen this, by teaching we learn. So often, just like Charlie said, especially my math background is similar to math.
Hey, Tom, could you get closer to the mic or something like that so we can hear you?
Thank you.
Good. You're going in and out.
Tell me if it is better.
Still a little choppy.
All right. I will try again another week.
Okay, because I want to hear what you have to say, but I can't hear it.
I understand.
Sorry, Tom. Okay. Well, it's about 10 o'clock. So next time, we will go into more discussion of memory and the value of repetition, a discussion of memorizing, and probably dissecting a little bit the difference between rote memorization in the positive sense and rote memorization in the negative sense, because depending on your experience with memorizing something and that term, rote memorization, you may think that it's been inspired by the devil, or you may think that it's a divine tool. So next week we will discuss repetitio mater memoriae, or sometimes it's a repetitio mater studiorum. Repetition is the mother of memory, or repetition is the mother of studies. So that will be our next principle that we cover, and I will email these to you, Charlie, and then we'll continue to go from there. Have a lovely Friday and a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sifting Through the Rubble.
All right. Bye.
Bye.